Okay, we are rolling. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Sip and Talkers, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to Sip and Talk.
Welcome back, everyone.
I'm skipping my usual latte today. I think I need something more like an extra strong cold brew because the topic we're about to get into, it's just so chillingly rational in a way that feels completely counterintuitive.
It really is.
You know, your analogy about selling ice cream in winter really stuck with me. I was just in New York last week, saw one of those little carts, and I was thinking, if that guy doesn't start selling, I don't know, hot soup or something warm, how on earth does he make it to next summer?
Right. Or is he so committed to the ice cream that he thinks if he just shouts, "Ice cream is the best," loud enough, the weather will just change for him?
Exactly. And that is what we're digging into today. So many of you have asked us to tackle the logic of the KMT in Taiwan, this whole idea of, knowing it's not possible, but doing it anyway.
It's a fascinating case of organizational psychology.
It is. We're going to look at the recent events where they've really doubled down on this Chinese identity.
And then we'll try to unpack why. Why are they doing this when it seems to cost them so many votes?
And finally, we'll touch on this historical shadow that the KMT seems to be living under. So let's start with the big contradiction, the political market failure.
Yeah, the ice cream versus the hot soup, adapt or die is pretty much rule number one in any market. But in the KMT's political logic, it's been twisted into a totally different kind of survival tactic.
So it's a kind of commercial misjudgment, right? They're treating their old inventory like it's a priceless antique.
That's the perfect way to put it. The assets they're holding onto, this idea of China orthodoxy and the 1992 consensus, it's like last season's ice cream flavor.
Okay, so if you were a normal business owner, what would you do?
You'd either put it on clearance or you'd just change the menu, right? You'd pivot, become a localized party, focus on what people actually want today.
But the KMT's logic is different.
Their logic seems to be, this isn't just old stock, this is a family heirloom. They see it as their foundational treasure.
And what's the big blind spot there? What are they missing?
Well, they seem to think that as long as they guard this freezer, Beijing, the giant industrial-sized freezer, if you will just keep supplying the electricity. They're afraid that if they start selling hot soup, if they pivot to a purely Taiwanese identity, they'll just be another food stall on the street. Indistinguishable from the DPP or the TPP, they'd lose that century-old store status.
So they're locked into serving a very specific and very small customer base.
Extremely small. We're talking about a base that wants to eat ice cream in the middle of a blizzard.
Let's put some numbers on that. What does the polling data actually say?
The numbers are, they're pretty staggering. If you look at the latest figures from the end of 2025, from places like the NCCU Election Study Center, identity in Taiwan it's basically settled.
How settled are we talking?
We're talking overwhelming. The number of people who identify as Taiwanese is consistently between, say, 77 and 95%, depending on how you ask the question. It's the vast, vast majority.
And the number of people who identify only as Chinese?
That has totally bottomed out. It's hovering somewhere around maybe 3 to 6.4%.
6.4%? That's tiny.
It's tiny, but it's absolutely critical. Because the KMT's actions aren't aimed at the 90+%. They are aimed squarely at keeping that 6.4% happy.
That feels like a political tragedy. I mean, running a national party for just 6% of the market, your overhead, your political rent, it would crush you.
And that's what you call structural lock-in. They're sacrificing the mainstream to prevent their core, their absolute diehard base, from walking away.
It's like they think the whole world is crazy for not wanting ice cream instead of realizing that maybe, just maybe, they're the ones who are out of sync with the season.
Exactly. So to really see this in action, we should probably look at some specific moments, right? The actual scorecard of events where this has played out.
Yeah, let's look at the friction points. What are some of the recent high-profile incidents that really put a spotlight on this?
Okay, so the biggest one, I think, has to be the party leadership election in October of 2025.
Right, the Zhang Liwen case.
Yeah. Her successful campaign for party chair was a defining moment. It cemented this Chinese label as the non-negotiable center of the party's identity.
So what was her platform? What was she saying that resonated so much inside the party but caused such a stir outside of it?
Well, her message was a direct appeal to that deep blue base. She made "I am Chinese" the core of her campaign. not just as a statement, but as a promise to restore the party's historical dignity and make people proud of that identity again.
So she won the internal primary with that message.
She did, and that victory proves that the internal mandate, the thing that gets you power inside the KMT, is ideological purity above all else.
But the reaction from the broader public was not positive.
Not at all. It was immediate and massive backlash. There was a Zen media poll right after her win, and it found that 62.1% of the general public strongly disagreed with her statement.
Wow, 62%. That single number just perfectly illustrates the whole problem, doesn't it?
It's the whole story in one data point. The process the party uses to select its leaders is actively optimizing it for political irrelevance in a general election.
They're choosing to satisfy the 6%, even if it means alienating the 62%.
It seems so. It's like they're operating in a completely insulated bubble.
And it's not just the new leadership. We've also seen this from the party's elder statesmen, right?
Absolutely. Former President Ma Ying-jeou's messaging is a great example of trying to thread this needle. He tries to frame it in a softer, more cultural way.
How does he do that?
During his visits to China in 2024 and 2025, he kept emphasizing this idea of being descendants of the Yellow Emperor and saying things like, "We are all Chinese people."
And the rationale from the KRT is that this is about easing tensions, right? Building a bridge.
That's the official line.
Yeah.
That if you define the connection through culture and history, not just politics, it creates common ground with Beijing and, lowers the risk of conflict.
But does that cultural argument actually work with younger Taiwanese?
Not really. For the post-Sunflower generation, talking about the Yellow Emperor is like, talking about Charlemagne. It feels incredibly distant and irrelevant to their daily lives and their political identity.
It doesn't translate into political loyalty.
No, it's seen as the opposite. It's seen as an erosion of Taiwan's sovereignty. They hear cultural connection, and they think it's just the first step towards political absorption.
So even the soft approach is seen as a threat.
It is. The context has just changed so much. The KMT is trying to use a 5,000-year-old ancestry argument to solve a very 21st century problem about democracy and sovereignty.
What about a more moderate approach? I remember the legislative speaker, Han Kuo-yu, tried a milder tactic.
He did. During a National Day speech in 2024, he's very careful. He said, "Chinese culture is our root." He specifically avoided the "I am Chinese" phrasing.
So just a cultural nod. How did that land?
In this political environment, it was immediately interpreted through a political lens. Because of everything else the party was saying, even that mild cultural statement was seen as the KMT speaking in concert with Beijing.
So there's no room for nuance anymore.
It seems like there isn't. When the leadership is making such strong ideological statements, even the moderate voices get drowned out or, pulled into that same narrative. The party has kind of lost the benefit of the doubt with the public.
They're trapped. We've established this organizational paralysis. Let's get into the why. Why can't they just, sell the ice cream truck and open a soup stand? What's the deep underlying logic?
Okay, so this is where we have to shift from thinking about electoral strategy to thinking about organizational survival. What they're doing is not about winning. It's about not dying.
What's the existential threat they're so afraid of?
The core fear is losing their historical legitimacy as the representative of China orthodoxy. That is their one and only unique selling proposition. It's the only thing that makes the KMT the KMT.
Okay, so let's play this out. What would happen tomorrow if the KMT leadership announced, "We are now a Taiwan First Party, the China chapter is closed"? What are the immediate consequences inside the party?
It would be a complete structural collapse. Three things would happen instantly. First, they would be denying their entire reason for existence. Their whole story since 1911 is based on being the legitimate government of China.
So invalidating their own history.
Completely. Second, that means their entire historical mission is invalidated. A century of work, of belief, of identity, poof, gone. How do you keep the party together after that?
And the third thing?
They become just a plain local party. They lose all their special leverage with Beijing, and they have to compete on domestic issues against the DPP, which always claim to be more Taiwanese, and the TPP, which can always claim to be newer.
Their brand value drops to zero.
Instantly. So that statement, "We are Chinese people," isn't about winning an election. It's a firewall. It's a firewall to stop the entire organization from just ceasing to exist.
That makes a chilling kind of sense. So if they're not talking to the 90% of Taiwanese voters, who is the real audience for this message?
It's a very specific, multi-layered message. They're talking to three groups at the same time, and none of them are the median voter in Taiwan.
Okay, who's group number one?
Group one is that deep blue base. the 6.4%. Their money, their loyalty, their identity is all wrapped up in this. The party has to keep affirming them or it will fracture from within.
That's internal survival. Who's Group 2?
Group 2 is, of course, the leadership in Beijing. The KMT has to constantly prove that they are the only reasonable, viable negotiating partner in Taiwan, that they're the only ones who even speak the same political language, however vaguely.
That's their ticket to the international stage.
It's their only ticket. And Group 3 is a bit more subtle. It's about maintaining international ambiguity.
What do you mean by that?
By clinging to the Republic of China framework and the Chinese identity, they keep alive this narrative that the Chinese Civil War is unfinished. They hope this gives international powers like the U.S. a reason to see the issue as an internal affair rather than an invasion of a sovereign state.
And that ambiguity is incredibly valuable to Beijing.
It's maybe the most valuable service the KMT provides them. It's living proof that a non-sovereignty Chinese political narrative still exists in Taiwan.
Why does the CCP need that proof so badly?
Because it lets them go to the UN or to other countries and say, look, Taiwan isn't monolithic. The main opposition party agrees this is a historical internal issue. The KMT, just by existing in its current form, helps legitimize Beijing's claims on the world stage.
So we come back to this paradox. The goal isn't to win votes.
The goal is to prevent the KMT from being erased by history. It's a strategy to maximize the organization's lifespan, not its political power.
Because if they try to compete as just another Taiwanese party,
they lose their only irreplaceable asset. They become an old, undifferentiated brand in a very competitive market. And in a democracy like Taiwan's, old, tired parties tend to fade away pretty quickly.
Wow. So they are positioning themselves as the sole agent of China's unfinished history. It's like they refuse to leave the stage, even though the audience has gone home and the theater is closing.
That's a good way to put it. But this rigidity, this refusal to leave the stage, it's causing them to fall into some really deep, really dangerous logical traps.
Okay, let's break those down. What are the 3 fatal flaws in their thinking?
Okay, trap number 1. They're confusing the path with the destination.
Unpack that for us.
The KMT logic is that recognizing a connection to China is the path to peace. It's a pragmatic way to buy time and avoid war.
That might have made sense in the 1990s, but today...
The reality of 2025 is that for most people in Taiwan and for many international observers, that path looks like a one-way ticket to being absorbed. After Hong Kong, the idea that you could just talk your way to a peaceful coexistence with the CCP, well, that's a tough sell.
Right. What the KMT sees as a bridge, the public sees as a ramp onto the highway to annexation.
Exactly. Okay, trap number 2. A kind of collective inferiority complex about the Taiwan brand.
This one sounds more psychological.
It is. The KMT seems to believe that without the China label, the Republic of China becomes nothing. Just some small, insignificant island. They're afraid of losing that historical weight.
But the reality is that the Taiwan brand has never been stronger.
It's a global powerhouse. It's the gold standard for semiconductors, for AI, for democratic values in Asia. The world recognizes and values the entity of 23 million people for what it is today, not for its historical claims from 1947.
So they're clinging to an old, faded business license when they're actually the CEO of one of the most important companies in the world right now?
That's it. They're undervaluing their present because they're obsessed with their past.
And the third trap.
The empty shell of the agent. Or the obsolete middleman.
So their belief is that their value comes from being the broker between Taipei and Beijing.
Yes, the essential go-between. But a middleman is only valuable if both sides need you.
And do they?
Not anymore. Beijing has spent decades building its own direct channels into Taiwan's society. They want direct control, not a broker. And at the same time, Taiwan is speaking directly to its most important allies, the US, Japan, Europe.
So the KMT is stuck in the middle, but nobody's using them to send messages anymore.
They're the unpaid and kind of annoying middleman that nobody really needs, but who keeps insisting on taking a commission.
This really highlights just how much their function has decayed over time. Let's trace that evolution. How has the KMT's own self-concept changed?
It's shifted dramatically. You can really see it in 3 phases. Phase 1 was the Chiang Kai-shek era, the age of law and sacred authority.
The goal back then was simple.
Recover the mainland.
Yeah.
Period. The logic was that the KMT was the one true China, saying, I am Chinese, justified authoritarian rule in Taiwan because it was a military base for the eventual counterattack. It was an active, aggressive, savior mentality.
Okay. What's phase 2?
Phase 2 is the post-democratization era, the agent's geopolitical leverage. Here, The goal shifts from retaking China to managing the relationship.
So this is where they become the dialogue broker.
Exactly. The goal is peace and profit. The logic is that by maintaining the Chinese connection, they can buy time and dominate the lucrative cross-strait economic trade. It was a defensive, pragmatic pivot.
And that brings us to today, Phase 3.
Phase 3 is what I'd call the cold conclusion, from being the protagonist to just being a witness.
What's the core narrative of the party now?
This is the most profound shift. The narrative has gone from "we will take China back" to "we must prove that it's rational for China to take Taiwan back."
Hold on, you're saying their function now is to provide the historical and legal justification for their own absorption.
It sounds extreme, but that's what the functional degradation of their logic leads to. They're no longer fighting for the future. They're just trying to write a neat and tidy final chapter for their own history book, even if it means they're just a footnote in someone else's story.
That is a stunning conclusion. It's not a political strategy. It's an organization preparing for its own eulogy.
It is. Which brings us to a really cynical theory that you always hear in these discussions.
The evil genius theory.
The idea that maybe this is all just a big grift. The profit and run scenario.
Right, that the political elites are just cooperating to get rich, and they plan to cash out and move to, I don't know, California once unification happens.
You have to debunk that one right away, because it completely misunderstands the nature of the CCP's political control.
The idea of a clean getaway is a fantasy.
It's a total fantasy. The CCP doesn't see collaborators as partners. It sees them as risk assets to be managed and eventually neutralized.
Because if you'll betray one system, you might betray another.
Precisely. There is no exit strategy. To get deep into that system, you have to hand over, leverage your network, your financial information, compromising material. Once you've done that, you've lost control. Your passport, your assets, your family safety, they're not yours anymore.
You think you're getting a golden handshake, but you're actually getting golden handcuffs.
And we've seen this play out time and time again. Look at historical defectors, or even the pro-Beijing elites in Hong Kong. They get praised, given symbolic titles, and then they're hollowed out and put under surveillance.
Which leads to the ultimate irony. Unification wouldn't just destroy Taiwan's democracy, it would destroy the KMT itself.
It's the great paradox. The moment unification is achieved, the KMT's entire reason for being, their unique historical claim, becomes not just irrelevant, but a threat.
Their value becomes zero the second they achieve their supposed goal.
Think about it from the CCP's perspective. The KMT is the only other organization that has experience running a country called China. They have institutional memory and the ability to mobilize people. For a one-party state, that's not an ally. That's a substitute risk.
So what would happen to the party itself?
Best case scenario, they become a vase party. They're kept around for decoration, allowed to exist in name only, but stripped of any real power. They become a historical curiosity in a museum.
They're dismantled not out of hate, but as a matter of political hygiene.
Exactly. And we have to remember what this would mean for the 23 million people in Taiwan.
A catastrophic downgrade.
On every level. Economically, Taiwan loses the Silicon Shield. The moment it's part of the PRC, U.S. tech sanctions, the GHPS Act, all of that immediately applies.
Its economy goes from being at the core of the world to being a blocked-off province.
And politically. Well, we've all seen what happened to one country, two systems in Hong Kong. The credibility of Beijing's promises is zero.
It's not just a change of system. It's an extinction event for a democratic way of life. The freedom to criticize your leaders, to own property securely, all of that disappears.
It's a total transformation.
Okay, this has been an incredibly deep and, frankly, sobering analysis. It's clear that the KMT is caught in a loop it can't seem to break.
And the final takeaway really is that this isn't about stupidity. It's a classic case of path dependence. They're trapped by their own history, and they're more afraid of organizational death than they are of electoral defeat.
They are protecting the past self of the party, not the future Taiwan.
To go back to our analogy one last time, they're not adjusting to the weather. They're standing in the snow, holding a melting ice cream cone, waiting for a massive climate change event to prove them right.
And the odds of that happening are, well, they're not good. Now, as a final thought for our listeners, it's important to frame this against what's happening internationally.
That's a great point, because while the KMT is focused on this internal historical Chinese narrative, the rest of the world is moving in the complete opposite direction.
What do you mean?
The global consensus, from the G7 to major international media, is increasingly treating the Taiwan issue as a global concern, not an internal Chinese affair.
So the world is essentially validating the Taiwan brand, while the KMT is still trying to sell the China orthodoxy brand.
Exactly. The world is saying, we recognize Taiwan's democracy, its economy, and that completely bypasses the KMT's preferred role as the historical mediator. It poses a really important question for all of you listening. When you look at a political party, are its actions designed for its own survival or for the democratic well-being of its people?
A crucial distinction to make. And on that note, we have to wrap up. This was an absolutely mind-opening discussion. Thank you for breaking down this complex logic so clearly.
My pleasure. It's always fascinating to unpack the logic behind what seems illogical.
And to all our Sip and Talkers, thank you for tuning in. We hope this gave you a lot to think about, that intersection of history, identity, and the cold, hard logic of organizational survival.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, please make sure you subscribe to Sip and Talk wherever you get your podcasts. You won't want to miss what we have coming up.
And we also want to give a quick shout out to our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life.
Yes. Go check it out for some fun memes and the latest travel vlogs. It's great stuff.
It really is. Subscribe to Mickey to Life. We'll catch you all on the next Sip and Talk.